Hi everyone, Tina here, and today I'd like to talk about straight line graphs. In this video, I want to talk about the extra ideas about straight line graphs that you'll need to know if you're doing the higher course. I have made another video on the essential skills for straight line graphs, so I'd recommend you watch that video first if you haven't already. Here is a list of the key ideas that I covered in the first video, with the extra ideas I'm going to cover here highlighted in purple. Let's start with drawing straight line graphs using the gradient. In the previous video, I showed you how you could draw a straight line graph using a table of values, and this is an easy way to do it, but it does take a bit of time. So this way is a shortcut method. What you do is you take a look at the straight line equation that they want you to draw, and you start with identifying the y-intercept, so in this case 5. And that is where you're going to put your first point. Then you look at what the gradient is, and in this case it's -2. So you go 1 across from the y-intercept, and in this case 2 down to get your next point. Then again, 1 across to the right, 2 down, next point, and so on. Once you've got a few points plotted and you feel confident to draw the line, you go for it and you should get a nice straight line through those points. Next method for drawing straight line graphs, which is a bit of a shortcut, is using x equals 0 and y equals 0. Looking at this equation, y equals 5 minus 2x, consider what happens when x is equal to 0. So subbing in x is 0, we get this, means y is equal to 5. And that gives you the first point that you can put on your drawing, 0, 5. When y is equal to 0, and subbing that in instead, you get 0 equals 5 minus 2x. You can then rearrange this to find out what x would be. And in this case, 5 over 2, or 2.5. So that's your next point, 2.5, 0. And you can put that straight on the graph as well. And then all you need to do is join up those 2 points. Then extend the line as well. Knowing that x equals 0 and y equals 0 method can be really useful for questions like this. So we're told that the equation of a straight line is 3x plus 2y is equal to 24, and they want us to circle the point where the line crosses the x-axis. So considering the fact that where the line crosses the x-axis, that will be when y is equal to 0. So all you need to do is substitute y equals 0 into the equation and solve it. X is equal to 8, so the answer is going to be 8, 0. Moving on to the next higher idea, perpendicular lines. In the previous video, I talked about how parallel lines have the same gradient as each other. So in this case, the purple and the blue lines both have a gradient of 2 and they're parallel. What we also need to know for higher though is that perpendicular lines, lines that cross each other at a right angle, those have a special type of gradient, and hopefully you can see it's related to the 2, but in fact it's -1 over 2, and we call that the negative reciprocal. So the key fact here is that perpendicular lines have a negative reciprocal gradient. So perpendicular lines have a negative reciprocal gradient. Let's look at some examples. So let's say the gradient was 2. As we saw there, the negative reciprocal is -1 over 2. So negative means you swap the sign, and reciprocal means 1 over, or flipping the gradient number upside down. If the gradient was 3, the negative reciprocal would be -1 over 3. If the gradient was -4, the negative reciprocal would be positive in this case, but still 1 over 4. If the gradient was already a fraction, like 1 over 5, then the negative reciprocal would be -5. And let's say you've got 2 over 3, negative reciprocal would be -3 over 2. Got 2 examples here that involve perpendicular lines, so let's have a look. First one, the straight line L1 has equation x plus 2y equals 4. The straight line L2 passes through the points -1, -7 and 7, 9. Michael says that the lines L1 and L2 are perpendicular. Is Michael correct? You must show clearly how you get your answer. It's hard to identify any gradient for L1 because it's not in the right form. It's not in y equals mx plus c form. So let's change that. L1, x plus 2y equals 4. If we rearrange that, we can say 2y equals -x plus 4, and therefore y would be -1/2 x plus 2. In this case, the gradient, the number in front of the x, is -1/2. If we look at L2 now, we're not given an equation yet for L2, but we know it will have the form y equals mx plus c. We're actually only interested in finding the gradient, so we can go ahead and use whichever gradient method we like. I like to use m equals change in y over change in x. And then think about how the y and x are changing. So in this case, using the coordinates to help us, the change in y from -7 to 9 is in fact plus 16. And the change in x from -1 to 7 is plus 8. That gives 2 as a gradient. Is Michael correct? Yes, Michael is correct. The lines are perpendicular because -1/2 and 2 are negative reciprocal gradients. Another way of thinking about negative reciprocals is if you times the two numbers together, so in this case -1/2 and 2, you will always get -1. That's another way of thinking about it. Second example, the straight line L1 has equation 2y equals 6x minus 5. The straight line L2 is perpendicular to L1 and passes through the point 9 minus 1. Find an equation for L2, and this time give your answer in a specific form ay plus bx equals c. We'll worry about that final form at the end. For now, starting point is looking at that equation L1, 2y equals 6x minus 5. Again, it's not really in a useful format for figuring out what the gradient is, so let's divide everything by 2. That way we'll get y on its own, and we can then see that the gradient is 3. For L2, which we're told is perpendicular, we can go ahead and say that y is going to be equal to -1/3 x plus c. -1/3 because it's perpendicular, so we're going to take the negative reciprocal gradient. Negative reciprocal of 3 is -1/3. Next, to find out what c is, we can just use the point that we're given, 9 minus 1, and substitute in the x and y values. So in this case, x is 9 and y is -1. So if we go ahead and pop those in, so -1 equals -1/3 times 9 plus c, -1 equals -3 plus c, means c will be equal to 2. So overall, the equation for L2 is y equals -1/3 x plus 2. That is correct, but it's not in the format that they want. So they want ay plus bx is equal to c. Usually when they ask for it in this format, they also want a, b, and c to be integers or whole numbers. So what you can do is multiply everything by 3 and then rearrange it. And that's it. That's it for now. If you found this video useful, please do remember to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And do share this with anyone else that you think might find it helpful. Thanks, and see you next time.